Welcome to Coffee, Culture, and the Capital with Sophia and Greg. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We have some sad news for you guys, and that is just that this is our last Coffee, Culture, and the Capital episode of 2025. But do not worry, we will be back in 2026, keeping you all updated about what is happening at the California Capitol and all across California. But before we dive into the stories we're going to talk about today, Greg, what do we have coming up on March 16th, 2026?
Well, we have the annual March for Life. We're very excited to host in March. Hopefully, it's going to be our biggest and best ever. So make sure you put that on your calendars.
Yes, absolutely. And so if you want to learn more about that, tune into californiafamily.org. You will see the March for Life page there. We will be announcing speakers once the new year hits, but you can see the whole day of schedule already. And we are so excited to be with you all at the state capitol marching for life on March 16th, 2026. But with that, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the life issue today on the podcast in relation to pregnancy resource centers and the attacks they face. But before we dive into that, an issue that we've been talking a lot about this year, it's been the forefront of what's happening in California. We've even seen nationally one of the major issues is the LGBTQ plus issue with this whole idea of pronouns and trans ideology, and you can choose whatever identity you want to choose. So Greg, this isn't anything new though in 2025. In 2025 wasn't the first time we've been facing attacks on our speech when it comes into the regards of trans ideology. We actually saw this start back a couple years ago at the state capitol. You testified on these issues before I think people were even really talking about them much in the news, in the public. And so we're actually seeing a law that compels free speech kind of come back to life, SB 219. So walk us through what that is, and maybe we can kind of walk through the timeline of it as well.
All right, this bill is about pronouns, preferred pronouns that many of those who identify as transgender want other people to use when they reference them. Like, as Christians, we know that our sex can't change. Our feelings might be confused, or we might not feel comfortable in our own bodies, but that doesn't make us a different sex. We are either male or female, and our biology determines that. That's not the philosophy here at the Capitol. Your sex is what you feel you are. And there aren't just male and female sexes. They call it gender, and there's an unlimited number of genders. And so this idea is being forced into our culture by these laws that mandate that other people use pronouns that don't match their sex. And so this first came up when I first got hired. They introduced this bill, and by they, I mean Senator Scott Wiener out of San Francisco introduced a bill regarding long-term care facilities. These are nursing homes, more commonly known, and he was upset that there were transgender identified individuals going to these homes, and they weren't able to room with other people based on their gender identity. They had, if they were biologically a male but identified as a woman, they wanted to go to into these nursing homes, and they wanted to be housed with other women. Of course, you're kind of just completely neglecting the other woman who doesn't want to be in the same room in private spaces with a male. But part of this, so this law was SB 219, was going to require that private, public, doesn't matter, nursing homes accommodate the desires of those who identify as transgender. They could go whatever room they wanted, but also it required the staff to refer them as the sex that they identified as. So there are many faith-based nursing homes. I mean, started by churches or Christians. And for those who want a Christian atmosphere in a nursing home, clients go to these particular faith-based nursing homes. But the state was going to require them, the employees, to abandon their own views about sexuality and use another person's preferred pronouns. So we're not just talking about, hey, talk, if somebody else says they're a woman, then you have to refer to them as ma'am, or you have to refer to them as she, her. But also, there are other genders, and I could pull up a list. You could be a no gender. You could be you can have both genders at the same time. It's just unlimited number of variations on gender, and of course, they have corresponding pronouns that aren't male and female, and zer and zim and all these weird, strange pronouns. And this Senator Weiner wanted to make sure that the law required the employees to use these preferred pronouns. And if you didn't, it was going to be a big fine. And if you still refuse to use somebody's preferred pronoun, jail time was the ultimate punishment. So this testified against this bill, and why don't we just listen to what I said? This is back in 2017 in the committee. You'll notice I look a little different. I'm much younger.
I want to clarify real quick, Greg. You said that so Senator Scott Weiner wanted to make it so that if someone in nursing homes did not use someone else's preferred pronoun, the punishment could be jail time.
Was in the bill.
Insane. Okay, let's go check out and tune in to when you testified back in 2017.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Greg Burt, and I work for the California Family Council. I'm here on behalf of tens of thousands of Californians, allied organizations, and over 2,000 churches across the state. No one deserves to be harassed or mocked or be kicked out of a residential facility for identifying themselves as transgendered. So we don't have a problem with that part of the bill. What we do have a problem with is making it illegal to hold a particular view of gender. There are two competing views of gender here. One view says that gender is determined by biology. The new view, promoted by Senator Weiner and others, is that gender is a matter of personal choice. These are two strongly held views. Living in a free country as we do, those who have these opposing views need to find a way to live with each other, to tolerate the existence of each other without using the government to punish those on the opposing side. This bill says a private organization determines gender in a traditional way by biology, and that belief is reflected in the way they separate genders in rooms and bathrooms, then the state will run you out of business. Those opposing this bill are saying, if you disagree with me about my view of gender, you are discriminating against me. This is not tolerance, this is not love, and this is not mutual respect. People have sincerely held religious views about gender that are not based on malice or hatred, but this bill seeks to make their view of gender illegal. Now, I know you all believe in the First Amendment, or you say you do, and here's my question. How can you believe in free speech if you think the government can compel people to use certain pronouns when talking to others, as this bill proposes? Compelled speech is not free speech. Can a government compel a newspaper to use certain pronouns that aren't even in the dictionary? Of course not. What is coming next? What about TV reporters? Can you compel them to use certain pronouns? I would love to know how far you are going to take this. If you can do this with senior facilities, are you planning to mandate the use of these new pronouns for the entire population? The public deserves to know. California is a diverse state of people with different views, especially about gender. True tolerance tolerates people with different views. We need to treat people with respect, but respect is a two-way street. It is not respectful to threaten people with punishment for having a sincere held belief that is different from your own. And so I respectfully ask that this bill be amended to respect those who sincerely believe that gender is based on biology. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to recognize the fact, Greg, that this again is 2017. I think a lot of people think that it was in 2023, 2024, this past year, 2025, where we were fighting these issues at the Capitol. But this right here shows that you've been there. California Family Council has been there. I mean, this is before I was at CFC fighting against this transgender ideology that the Capitol keeps pushing. I also want to recognize that you did ask in your testimony that we just watched, you said along the lines that if you were going to push these pronoun mandates in these nursing facilities, where will it end? Are you going to eventually try to push this everywhere? I'm assuming Senator Scott Wiener probably did not give you a response to that question, but we now know down the line, yeah, he does evidently want this pushed everywhere. He's made it clear where he stands on this trans ideology. And so you testified, this bill did pass through. We then see that Governor Jerry Brown at the time signed this bill into law. So I want to recognize that when people think Governor Newsom's extreme, it didn't just start with him. Other governors have pushed this. Unfortunately, if we continue to see someone like Newsom in office, we'll see this continue to be pushed. But Governor Jerry Brown signed it into law into 2017. What kind of happened next?
Well, there was an attorney who sued saying it violated free speech, which it does. Compelled speech violates free speech. And in 2021, the Third District Court of Appeals ruled that this bill was indeed unconstitutional. The pronoun provisions are illegal. And so, but the Attorney General of California was defending this law. He took it to the state Supreme Court. And we are talking about this because the state Supreme Court just came out with the decision last month that this is indeed constitutional and legal, and that we are not, they said that we are actually regulating regulating conduct, not speech. And that's their argument, that it's just like regulating harassment. Like an employer has the right to regulate sexual harassment in the workplace and provide penalties if you're sexually harassing someone. In the same way, you are harassing someone if you're not using the pronouns they want to. But in this case, the other case, you're simply saying this language is bad, don't say it. And in this case, you must say this language that we want you to say, or you're bad. So I guess the misgendering is considered as bad as sexually harassing someone. So I guess that's what they mean. But this is what they have done, made these similar arguments with pro-life centers. Any place where California regulates someone and they try to regulate their speech, they simply say, we're not regulating speech, we're regulating conduct. And we can regulate behavior. And so they just turn your viewpoint into conduct, and then they think they can mandate you say it or shut it down.
So now, Greg, with all of that kind of coming out, where are we at with SB 219 from 2017? Now, if someone in a nursing facility chooses to not use someone's preferred pronouns because they don't believe in this whole transgender ideology, can they find themselves in prison because of Scott Wiener's bill? Or do we see any chance of moving past this in the courts again? Where are we left today?
Well, what we need to, this is the problem with this case to begin with, is they should have taken it to federal court right away and not gone through state court. Typically, if you want to go to the Supreme Court, which still upholds the First Amendment, then you need to start in federal court. It's much harder to start in state court, go to the state Supreme Court, and then from there appeal to the Supreme Court from California Supreme Court. What we need is we need to file another lawsuit. But in order to do that, we need to have a brave nursing home who's willing to stand up for their religious liberty rights, or we need somebody who's working in a nursing home to object and say, I cannot say the words they want me to say without violating my faith, without violating what I believe to be true about biology, and then get an attorney and file a lawsuit. That's where we are right now. Otherwise, I mean, so far this law has not been implemented on anyone. No one has been charged so far, right? So no one is challenging it. Sadly, I think we're all just acquiescing. But folks, we acquiesce, and here's what I anticipate happening in the coming years. Maybe this coming year, we're going to have more bills introduced to criminalize misgendering. Right now in California, the schools, they teach All the teachers have to go through training telling them that they must use pronouns, but there's no penalty at this point. Now, maybe you could get fired for not obeying, but there's no criminal penalty, right? But maybe Scott Wiener's going to change that. He's I think this is one of his last years in office, and he wants to run for Congress, replace Nancy Pelosi. He wants to go out with a bang. He'll introduce a bill to affect some other part of our employment apparatus. I mean, he could even do it to other nonprofits like the California Family Council. You could simply say, hey, all nonprofits must not misgender. And so we'll see what happens, folks. But this pronoun thing, this is something that must be resisted. I think a lot of Christians are simply saying, well, I don't want to cause problems. I'll just say the words they want me to say. That is a bad recipe for your liberties going out the window. It is not right to lie. And when you call someone a male, you use male pronouns for someone who is not a male, you are lying to them. That's not love. That's not compassion. Now, you don't have to, maybe you can try and avoid using pronouns, right? But do not say the wrong pronoun thinking you're being loving or kind. It will, once you acquiesce on this, they're gonna demand something else from you, right? Celebration, right? First it was tolerate our existence. Now it's say our words, and what's next? What's it going to be next? If you're not celebrating with the flag and putting on our button or hanging the flag from your classroom or sticking it on your car, you're hostile to us. Who knows?
Absolutely. And yes, again, I just really want to emphasize what you were saying there, Greg, is I think a lot of Christians think, well, I'll just use the person's preferred pronouns. And if they're male, but they want to be called she, her, or them, theirs, or all these things, I'll call them it just so I can have a conversation with them because it's loving. And let's be so clear, Christians. Genesis 1:27, God made us male and female. It is the first chapter of the first book of the Bible. If we can't get that right, what will we get right in the Bible? And so when we say we'll budge on that to be loving, why do we think that our understanding of love can outweigh and is greater than God's? And then when we start to apologize for what Scripture says, what are we doing? Why would we apologize for the truth? Why are we apologizing for the word that the creator of the universe gave to us? So stand strong. Do not use these words. And if you can't say, I'm not going to use someone's preferred pronouns, I'm not going to buy into that, I'm not going to cave to that ideology now, while there's not necessarily punishments of imprisonment, why will you stand then? So stand now, learn how to stand now, and stand for truth. And so I know, Greg, you and I can both go on for hours about how we feel about that and how we want Christians to stand for what's right and not buy into this ideology. But there is another story that we mentioned in the beginning that we're going to dive into today, and it's about pregnancy resource centers. And so pregnancy resource centers, we partner with them all the time here in California. They do amazing work where they provide free of charge help to mothers, families, fathers, women finding themselves in unplanned pregnancies, all these different situations. They free help for those people in need. They do an amazing job in California. Many of them are medically licensed by the state of California. So when you hear people spewing lies about pregnancy resource centers, why would they be licensed medically by the state of California if they were lying about the medical work they're doing? So I love pregnancy resource centers. I think they're amazing. If you come to the March for Life on March 16th, 2026, you'll be able to see a lot of pregnancy centers. Greg, what is going on in regards to pregnancy centers and the Supreme Court?
Right. We have this is a Supreme Court case called First Choice Women's Resource Centers versus Plankton, Platkkin. It was heard just recently. And regarding what was happening in New Jersey, the New Jersey Attorney General had launched an investigation into First Choice Women's Pregnancy Resource Center. Besides, even though they didn't have any particular complaints, and how they started harassing them was they started requesting from them, they had a subpoena that asked for all their internal communications for years. They wanted staffing information. They wanted names, addresses, employers of the center's donors and volunteers. The pregnancy center said, we're not going to give you all that. So they filed a lawsuit with Alliance Defending Freedom. And because this is how governments can harass a nonprofit they don't like, what they do is they ask for all their donors. And out of some kind of, you need to be transparent about who's supporting this organization. And that's a way of chilling the donations that actually come to a nonprofit. This tactic has been around for a very long time. There was actually a U.S. Supreme Court case back in 1958 where the NAACP was trying to defend itself against a group in Alabama that was asking them for all their donors. And the Supreme Court made a unanimous decision that said they don't have to turn it over to you, that this is harassment. And why would it be harassment? Well, because here's a tactic. Once they get a hold of the donors' addresses and phone numbers, they start making that public and they try and get other folks to persecute the donors, right? And if that happens, then people are not inclined to donate to their favorite charity. And so that's what's happening here in this case, we are hoping for a very positive outcome because California is dealing with the same thing. We've had various cases where our own Attorney General has sent out warnings to the public about pregnancy care centers, lying about what they do, saying they're trying to deceive women, pretending they're abortion clinics. A couple years ago, we had a legislator who introduced a bill that was supposed to put together an education campaign to let the public know about fake pregnancy centers. Although she didn't name a particular pregnancy center that she was concerned about that was lying. No, she just made general comments and used a survey that was put together by Planned Parenthood, who didn't list any specific organizations either, but they had all kinds of slanderous lies about the work that the pregnancy centers did. And one of the things they said, they're unlicensed. And so what we did here in Sacramento is we got Heidi Matsky from Alternatives Pregnancy Center to come and testify. And one of the greatest things ever was when they were claiming these are like unlicensed organizations pretending to offer healthcare when they don't. And then it was her time to testify. She has, okay, all my licensed nurses and doctors, will you please stand in the audience? And they all stood up. And then she started listing off all the licensing that there were requirements that her pregnancy care center does, all the free services, how they make sure everybody knows on the website that they don't do abortions. Because that's another thing they say, is that they say pregnancy centers pretend to be an abortion clinic so that women come to their centers looking for an abortion. And when they get there, they shame them into not having an abortion. So we were able to expose those kind of lies, but I don't know what it is with the government leaders. They just hate pregnancy centers.
Yes. And the funny part is pregnancy centers offer so much help and so much care. So if all these legislators, the government, et cetera, that claim to be pro-choice, then they would be open to the idea of women having help and resources to choosing life. So this really just goes to show you are either pro-abortion or you are pro-life. And a lot of these legislators in California, we see a lot of people in government, they want to hide under this guise of pro-choice to seem like they're pro-women. They're pro-abortion, they're anti-life, they're anti-women. That's the fact at the end of the day. But if you want to learn more about either of these stories, you can tune into California Family. You can find all of the articles CFC publishes there. You can read in depth. You can find all the different links. And you can also, if you do not get our weekly newsletter, every Monday we send out a newsletter where we give you the rundown of what is happening in the state of California. Make sure you go sign up for that. Again, that is at californiafamily.org. You can sign up for that newsletter to get that once a week, especially heading into 2026. We're going to see the legislative session kick off strong in January. And if you want to be aware of all of the bills, what is happening, what Christian values are under attack, what Christian values are being supported, get that newsletter. Yes, follow us on social media, tune into the podcast, all the things, but that newsletter will give it to you all at once. So go sign up for that, stay up to date with our social media. And we will see you guys. We'll hit the ground running in 2026 with California, with the legislature. Greg, any final goodbye notes you want to give to them for 2025?
I just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And for my family, we are excited to, we just welcomed in my first grandchild. And so that's very exciting for me and my family. And so it will be a great Christmas, I anticipate.
Yes, amazing. Yeah, he's now Grandpa Greg. But Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year. And we will see you guys all in 2026.